RT is sitting down with Larry Kotlikoff, professor of economics at Boston University. Professor Kotlikoff, thank you very much for sitting down to speak with me.
It's my pleasure.
Let's begin with your estimations of the economic situation in the United States. You have come out and said that the U.S. is bankrupt, in far worse fiscal shape than Greece. That is a pretty bold statement to make. Why so?
Well, it's based on data from the Congressional Budget Office, and also the IMF has produced very similar kinds of projections. If you really look at all the bills the government has due in the U.S., well, we have to pay lots of money for Social Security and Medicare, which is health care for the older people, and for Medicaid. And we also have defense spending obligations into the future. So all these projected bills really represent a form of debt. And they're the unofficial debt or the implicit debt. And they're huge. They're really high. And the official debt is actually relatively small. As a share of our output, for example, it's only about 70% or so, 60, 70%. What we do here is we compare all the spending from now through time and all the taxes that are going to be collected. And the spending includes paying off the official debt through time. And that difference is called the fiscal gap. And that fiscal gap is about $202 trillion based on the Congressional Budget Office's projections. And that's just enormous. It would require immediately and permanently doubling all our taxes, individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, payroll taxes. All these taxes would have to be doubled immediately and permanently to pay for this spending. And that's really impossible. So we have to cut the spending. And when you cut spending that you've promised to make, you're really reneging on an obligation. So that's the definition, really, of bankruptcy.
And one of those promises includes, according to you, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You say that Social Security has played a central role in, and I'm quoting you, in a massive 6-decade Ponzi scheme known as the U.S. fiscal policy. Now, why has it been a Ponzi scheme?
What we've been doing, and other countries have been doing this too, is you keep taking from young people more and more resources, and you give them to old people. And then you tell the young people, don't worry, when you become old, you'll have your turn to get back what you gave us plus a lot more, because we'll go after the next generation to pay you. And so we are, in effect, feeding off of our children. It's fiscal child abuse. And we're doing it through all these different programs: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, borrowing to pay for defense spending. So it's changing the tax structure so that the young have a bigger burden and the old are given tax breaks. The baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. Okay. So it's going to take a while for them all to retire. But when they all do retire, they're going to be paid on average about 110% of per capita GDP. Mm-hmm. So they're going to get paid more in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefits, just those three benefits, on average, than the entire output per person in the economy. And if you multiply the number of baby boomers that will be alive at that point times that kind of a payment, it becomes about $4 trillion a year in today's dollars. So if you think about $4 trillion every year just for those bills, you get a sense of why our fiscal gap is so enormous. The demographics are not the worst of developed countries. The U.S. is still going to be relatively young compared to countries in Europe, compared to Russia, even compared to China. But our benefit levels are so high, and they continue to grow much more rapidly than our output per person grows. And the combination of the two is lethal. So we have a fiscal policy that's not sustainable and that is going to destroy the American dream. Now, what could happen in 4 years is that, or even in 2 days, is that the international lenders to this country realize that this country really can't cover these bills. And they could stop buying our Treasury bonds and our Treasury bills, and they could send our interest rates sky high, and our dollar could come crashing down. We could have an international financial crisis overnight that could lead to the government having to print even more money. The government now is printing lots of dollars, and that could lead to inflation. And you could end up with a situation like Russia had in the late 90s, which is hyperinflation. So that's the real scary part of this, is when your countries can't pay their bills, they start trying to pay them by printing money, which is not really a solution. So we have to get control of this problem.
I've heard these type of theories for about 2 years now, that we can't keep printing money, we could be standing in line for bread, yet U.S. officials say that we are seeing slow signs of recovery. Are they trying to sugarcoat a problem? Are they trying to camouflage it?
They tend to like to sugarcoat and not discuss the long-term problems in their full magnitude. So this fiscal gap analysis that the IMF did in their 2010 review of U.S. fiscal policy, it was tucked away at the back of their report. It wasn't highlighted in the summary. So politicians are politicians. You're not going to necessarily get the truth from them. And an economy can be growing very well, and all of a sudden people realize how broke it is, and the bottom falls out. Take Argentina in 2002. Before that, for roughly 10 years, it was growing great guns. It was doing really well. All of a sudden, people realized that it was beyond its capacity to pay its bills, and everything fell apart. So the fact of the matter is the U.S. is not recovering very well. It is recovering, and whether this happens tomorrow or 2 years from now or 10 years from now, the reality is that we have a situation that we can't deal with if we continue to spend at this rate. We have to cut spending immediately and keep it low as a share of GDP through time. We have to do some radical things today, or it would just get worse.
What are Americans and foreign investors supposed to do with the information you're providing? Because it's a little scary when you're warning the country's going to collapse, essentially, is what you're saying.
Well, I think they can protect themselves by not buying long-term U.S. government bonds or long-term U.S. corporate bonds, because...
Don't buy into your own country?
Well, if you're an American and you're investing, or you're a foreigner, you're investing, are you going to invest in a bond that's going to pay you back fixed amount of dollars? If prices go up 10, 200%, whatever percent they go up, I think they're going to skyrocket given this policy, and therefore people are going to be paid back in watered-down dollars that won't buy anything in real terms. So if you want to protect yourself, you don't want to be investing in things that are going to lose value.
What about those that don't invest, that are just trying to live their life day by day? There are a lot of Americans that don't invest.
This is why it's so important to get this problem under control, because it's a threat to the prosperity of the country, to the employment situation, and to the wage growth for younger people. We need to really get people to be confident about the American economy and the American government and change that whole situation around. Right now, everybody understands to some degree, and some of us understand to a much greater degree, how broke this country is and how important it is to get control of it. But people are coming around to the understanding that things need to be fixed. Now, we have to radically reform our fiscal and also our financial institutions. The financial system in the U.S. Needs to be fixed fundamentally. It's fundamentally corrupt, as far as I can tell.
The economic advisors surrounding U.S. President Barack Obama, I trust that they understand the situation. If there's 10 of them, I trust that at least 3 do, if not all 10. Understand it in the way that you're explaining it. How come they're not applying any of the solutions or suggestions that you've just now laid out?
Well, the economists who go to work in Washington generally leave their economics at home and become politicians from one minute to the next. Immediately they go there and they say, oh, we can't propose the first best option for fixing this problem because it's politically unviable, so therefore we're going to propose the third best. And then you start discussing the third best and you end up with the fifth best. So we need to have some people with some, strength behind their convictions to say, look, either do it right or forget it.
If there are not any changes that take place soon, is the world going to see Americans rioting in the streets the same way that the world saw those living in Greece rioting in the streets?
We could have some pretty hard times. Yeah, we already have a lot of very hard times for many Americans right now, millions of Americans. I think we can see a very angry younger population. I mean, it's handing over so much of their paycheck to the government in different ways and getting back. They're going to have to at some point cut benefits dramatically. So leaving this big bill to younger people is going to make them very unhappy. And you may see people leaving the country to try and find jobs, even in China and other places. And so it's a pretty depressing story. But I don't want to just depress everybody. I want to try and get this thing fixed. I want to say, here's the truth. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. But there is a way to fix this. And having 500 cooks in Congress or so, that number of Congress people making law is going to end up as a mess. And we've seen that happen. So we need to have very simple solutions.
Professor Kotlikoff, thank you very much for sitting down with me.
My pleasure.